everyone, this is Kandy's Quarantine Conversations with me, Kandy Delore. I hope you're all doing great. I'm aware that certain lockdown restrictions have been easing in different places and closed stores are reopening and stuff like that. So if you are venturing out and about, please do so safely. Make sure you're wearing your mask, make sure you're practicing social distancing, and make sure you're washing your hands as well. Okay, so I would like to introduce you all to my super brilliant guest who I'm just so excited to have a conversation with today. She is a Sunday Times best-selling author in the fields of spirituality, heaven, the paranormal, and the afterlife. And her name is Theresa Cheung. Hi, Theresa.
I'm excited to be here.
Now, I am more excited to speak with you, believe me. I just think you are absolutely amazing. Would you mind telling the viewers and listeners a bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Well, how long have you got, really? Because goodness, I've been around a long time, about 25 years, writing about spiritual growth, belief in angels, belief in the possibility of an afterlife. I've worked with scientists, I've worked with the media, I've collaborated with practitioners, people who believe that they can see angels or talk to dead people to try and investigate what's going on. I do have a healthy dose of skepticism, but also I'm inclined to believe that there's more to this life to meet the eye. And I have made it my mission to spread this message that the most important thing in life is the spiritual. It should be the first, not the last thing we think of, because at the end of the day, what truly matters is love, feelings of connection with one another. As far as I know, on the 9/11 planes, all the messages were about love when they knew that they were going to meet their end. And the same, I worked in a hospice. They don't talk about all the stuff we focus on, which is jobs, career, how we look, all this kind of money, status. At the very end, it's what truly matters. And if there's anything about this quarantine, this lockdown, I have never had so much interest in what I do. As I said, I've been around 20 years, Kandy, writing about this, and in the UK, which is very, very skeptical, very, very skeptical when you've got this. I'm actually not a prophet in my own country. I'm more popular in Europe and overseas. My books have been translated all over the world in about 40 languages. But I've never had, in the space of a few weeks in May, I had Cosmopolitan, Heat, Yahoo, the Daily Mail, on and on and on, asking about dreams, why people were dreaming more, why the spiritual perspective. And I love what you're doing as well. You said quarantine conversations. You may not have approached me if it hadn't been for this, that we're going to have this talk about what really matters in life. I'm rambling, I'm aware here.
No, no, you're not. No, please keep going. Everything you're saying is relevant. Please don't stop.
I'm rambling, but I'm just very, very grateful that you reached out and we're talking and having this conversation about what really matters in life. Because I think the lockdown, the pandemic, and the recent protests as well about racism and everything have opened conversations that my books have been trying to start for years about there is more to this life than meets the eye. Where do we go when we dream? If you've ever lost someone, a loved one, you will know that they don't die. They kind of exist somewhere. And I have so many stories about this connection that death ends a life, not a relationship, that you continue it in spirit, all those things. And it's opened up the conversation as never before. I'm wildly excited. Also, stores like Anthropology, a big clothing store, asked me to do a webinar on dream interpretation. Beauty Bay, Sweet Dream. It was all about, we want the spiritual, because in times of crisis, as the world is now, always we go back to what's in our DNA, which is spirituality. And I truly hope that when things sort of get back to normal, if they ever can, that we will emerge with post-traumatic inner strength and focus more on what really matters, rather than all the rubbish that we've been focusing on in years past. I love the fact that news feeds now are more authentic, that key workers, health workers are getting applauded, not the reality stars and the celebrities. Nobody wants to hear what the celebrities has to say at the moment. We want to hear real life stories, don't we?
Yes.
But anyway, that's what I do. I have written close to 100 books about spirituality, approached in a different way, some about angels. I've done where people write to me about how they believe they've seen an angel, or an angel has touched their life in some way, or how they believe a departed loved one has communicated to them, or about the healing power of crystals, of nature, anything kind of new age. I hate that term new age, but that spiritual perspective. And it has been challenging. I mean, five years ago, when it got so skeptical and scientific and overdose of materialism, it was incredibly hard, and you get laughed at, you get ridiculed. You really do, to champion that perspective. And I can talk about how the skeptics, hound me. I've been hounded by skeptics over the years. But to sort of champion this, what I'm really just talking about is love and kindness and compassion, because every afterlife story or near-death experience story, near-death experiences when somebody's at the brink, when they do go to that other side and have a vision, it's always of interconnection, that we are all one, and unconditional love. And that's the message, because at the end of the day, that's what truly matters, surely, yes. Not the other stuff.
I agree. I most certainly agree. And back to where you said that, if it wasn't for quarantine, maybe I wouldn't have reached out to you. Maybe I wouldn't have, but I'll be honest with you. I first discovered you and your books. Actually, I've got one here. It's an angel on my shoulder.
I did about 10 of those, and it was really funny. In the end, the publishers were struggling to find where's to put the angel. It was like an angel in my head, an angel by my side, and it was just variation. It was so funny. And I actually find this is the one that makes me laugh the most, because I always think of a parrot on the shoulder and Long John Silver. It was a silly title, but but they're story collections, and these are true stories, because I include my email, and that's how in all my books, and I aim to reply to everyone. And when a story comes in that I feel is transformative and comforting, and often these people write to me saying, I don't know why this happened. I'm actually not a believer, but this coincidence, this sign, this vision, this dream saved or changed my life.
Yes, I can relate to that.
I've had thousands of stories like that, thousands, because I've been writing so long. My first angel book was back in the early 2000s, and it got to number 4 in the Sunday Times, just like that. Because I'm not a celebrity, the publishers just couldn't be bothered. They didn't put any promotion in it. And I remember sitting there reading the Sunday Times, and I always looked at the top 10 list, just thinking, oh, one day in my dreams. It was there. I couldn't.
Wow. That's brilliant. And you deserve to be there, honestly, because I actually first bought your book after I had an experience.
Oh, tell me, please.
I felt like people thought, oh, you're just in grief, because I had lost my dad. Well, he raised me since I was 3 months old with my mum. When I lost him, I had an experience, not just one, but there were several. And because I was in deep, deep grief. And I think it was like about 2 hours after my dad passed away, we were back at home, and I was just sitting in the living room with my mum, and we were like slowly discussing what had happened. And there was a packet of cookies on the table. Now, these cookies were unopened. They were brand new. I had just put them on the table for my daughter. And we were talking about my dad and the way he passed away. And suddenly, the whole packet of cookies flew up into the air and opened, and the cookies went everywhere. And for a minute, we couldn't talk. And my mum was like, Kandy, did you see that? And I was just like, yeah. And up to now, we talk about it. I think it's hard to believe that it happened, but it happened. It really happened. And then other things started happening. Like one night I was crying. We hadn't buried him yet. I was crying. I was in a mess. And I started to see, I felt something before I saw it. So, and I could hear like I heard something. I can't even explain it. And I felt this presence coming, but I could see it coming as well. And I got so scared, I froze up. I just felt like, I was petrified. I was terrified. I was afraid. And I knew it was my dad. I just knew it was him trying to come through. And I was raised in the West Indies in St. Lucia, and I spent a lot of my time with my dad out there because he built a house out there and stuff. And it was out there he gave me the nickname Padada. I know it sounds very weird, but that was my St. Lucian nickname, or it might be Padita sometimes, but he would generally call me Padada. And I'd forgotten about that name because it hadn't been used for a long, long time, for years. And it's like he knew I was afraid, so he stopped coming, and I just heard him say, Padada. And it was then I managed to get out, I love you, Dad. And then he went away. And then I the next morning, because I didn't even really sleep, and I started looking for books because I thought, right, I'm having an experience. You know, my dad isn't gone; he's still here. You know, and even my half sister, she told me that the same thing happened to her and her mum. They were talking about him, and his picture fell off the wall. And you hear so many people say these things, that pictures fall off the walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was scanning through books, and that's when I found yours, because I thought, right, I'm going to buy this because I want to hear about other people's stories. Actually, I went to Waterstones in my grief. I was that desperate. I couldn't wait for a delivery. I needed a book then and there. I needed to speak to, you know, I wanted to speak to people, but I just thought they're not going to understand.
No.
And my mum was caught up in funeral arrangements and other things that was going on. And I just wanted a book. I wanted to hear other people's experiences. And I got yours. And I must say, it helped me so much because I thought, I'm not crazy. This happened. You know, it happened.
I believe, Kandy. I can see also, I feel like your father's here now. Just you talking about him, I think that's an angel, and how much he loves you, that he's come through like that. And they do in spirit. And that's what I collect. And in any other field, this amount of anecdotal evidence would be data.
Yes.
It is data. And I have collated a massive database. And I'm so grateful that I was in position to collect these stories and put them in book form. I did about 12 of those kind of books with Schuster years back. But then I wanted to do more. I wanted to stop the skeptics saying, I mean, I'm sure everybody said, you're imagining it. Hallucination, wishful thinking, blah, 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 no proof. So I have been on a mission these last few years to find scientists who are actually researching this scientifically and put it on the map. And I have had remarkable success in a way, because I've collaborated with the Windbridge Institute, which is Dr. Judy Beischel. She investigates, I call her the medium whisperer. She's a scientist. She used to test drugs scientifically. And she went to a medium who made contact with her departed mother in a way that was extraordinary, gave details that she could not know because it was a random person that she went to. And then she decided, well, you test drugs scientifically, let's test mediums. And the Windbridge Institute in the States is amazing because they actually test mediums scientifically with no possibility of fraud. And their research is incredible. They now have a list of scientifically validated mediums who are able to, you know, have passed the test. Yeah. The trouble is, in this field, there is a lot of fraud, whatever. And then I also work with scientists who are studying things like intuition and precognition and all these invisible possibilities. Dr. Julia Mossbridge, who is leading the world in the study of intuition as a science, as a belief. So I've done that to try and have something to answer the skeptics. And I did this also as a reaction to my Russell Brand interview on Under the Skin. I went on there.
Yes, I saw that.
Hounding me about the science, and I didn't have enough. So I've really, really tried to give something to answer the skeptics. But I know that if you have lost a loved one, you will sense them. You will know that they've not gone. They live in some realm.
Yeah.
And I think of it almost as the realm when you dream. Where do we go when we dream? What is this world?
Yes.
And to answer its hallucination, well, first of all, hallucinations typically make people feel very depressed and disordered. Hallucinations don't make sense. They do not give you the euphoria that your experiences would have, for example. Hallucinations drag people down. They drain their energy. They make no sense. There's no narrative to it, right? Anyone who's had hallucinations, it's depression, it's exhaustion. Wishful thinking, why doesn't everybody pick this up? It's only certain people sometimes who do. So it isn't wishful thinking. It truly isn't, because it also, people who've had these experiences, they typically go on to have a renewed sense of meaning and purpose that they never had before. And that for me is the biggest proof. It's the touch of heaven, or whatever, if you call it spirit, that anything that gives you this renewed sense of purpose and meaning and hope, for me, is the touch of an angel. And your experiences did. And I've seen too many people like you talking about this and how it has transformed them. I've also worked with psychics and mediums who I believe are honest and authentic because they have been tested scientifically to know there's too much data out there now. Since the beginning of time, people have had these experiences.
Yes. Now, I've had so many experiences, more than what I've told you. I believe so much. I know that there is more. We don't just die. It's not the end. You know, there is so much more. Like, I lost a friend, a lifelong friend, very close, family even, last year. And after I got home from the hospital and stuff, I was hungry, but I couldn't eat. And I thought, no, I need to eat because I'm getting it. You know, when you have such a bad headache. And I thought, I just need to eat just to get rid of this headache because I'm not going to make it through the day. And I still had the school run to do and stuff. So I just forced myself. So I made a sandwich. You know, I love food. I'm not going to lie. I love food. And for some reason, food is always involved in experiences. So I made myself a sandwich and I cut off the crust. Now, I have suffered from depression and anxiety before. And when I tend to feel low, one of the things is I'm not on as point with my cleaning. You know, I would just probably say, I'll do it later. You know, I'm sure most people can relate to that. Just do it later. You know, I'm in my feelings right now. So I made the sandwich, took a bite out of it and put it back on the board. And I hadn't thrown away the crust, and I walked away, and I literally I was like just walking around the room. I was just so sad. I was just so gutted. I just couldn't believe what had happened. And all of a sudden, the crust from the bread went in, like it just went in a bag. The bag was underneath the table, not as like pushed in underneath, but it was out kind of like, and it just flew off the table and went into the bag. And I just thought, he's telling me, don't slack now. You better tidy up this mess. You know, you better keep going.
No, this story is just like almost all of the stories in my books have these unexplained things that happen that are not imagination. Because one of the things I'm passionate about saying in my books, the people that write to me, they are not insane.
Yeah.
They come from all walks of life. And as you see, they're people from as young as 8 to like 98. I've had stories. Barristers, lawyers, teachers, doctors, mums, children, students, all walks of life. They are people who are very credible. And a lot of them write to me and say, I've not been able to say this to someone else before because I'm worried what they think. I'm not mad. I'm not actually even religious. But something has happened that was so strange that it's utterly transformed my life. And I'm glad you brought up depression as well, Kandy, because depression, in my opinion, is a thirst, a hunger for meaning. It's not food or alcohol or drugs, whatever if it's addiction and depression are very similar. It's not, I mean, depression in particular, it's a hunger for meaning. It's a thirst for wholeness. And angels often speak through that. They are pulling you out of the material. They are forcing you on your knees. And don't feel bad if you feel depressed. I mean, I've suffered from many times of depression in my life, typically following the loss of a loved one, when I felt there's no hope. But, you know, depression will pull you out. And depression does tend to strike people who are quite sensitive. I mean, even Mother Teresa famously had the dark night of the soul, you know, that she wrote openly about that. The being down, it's often people who are trying to be a better person, to try and to rise above it. And I think if you can shift your perspective from the depression to being a thirst and a hunger for wholeness, the spiritual way out of depression is not what's treated in therapy or whatever. And it really needs to look at that hunger for meaning. You know, it's not about just getting you on track so you can function and you can take care of yourself again, get the job, get the relationship. All these things are wonderful. I mean, this life is a wonderful opportunities for us to explore. I mean, relationships are wonderful. Work is wonderful. You know, being fit and well is what, all these things are wonderful, but they can never give us meaning, true fulfillment. We think they do. And there's nothing sadder, actually. As I said, I worked in a hospice for many years before I went to university. And there's nothing sadder when somebody suddenly has that realization that their focus all their life has been on things that are out there, not in here. It's getting that balance. I do think we're on this earth to learn the material. And I think a lot of spiritual people make the mistake that they go too far the other way. And that I'm like that, lacking common sense and practicality, not my strong point. Ask my family. But it's tragic when people focus so much outside themselves. They'll be happy when the guy wants to marry them, or they'll be happy when they have children, or their children succeed. They'll be happy when they get the promotion, when there's this amount of money in the bank account, when their cheekbones look a certain way. You can see it so obvious to me now because I'm much, much older. But when you're in it, it's very hard for younger people to not understand. The trouble is, all the society gives us the message that happiness is going to be found in the external.
Yes.
The only way out is
in. And I think that a lot of these things, what you're describing, it happens when you actually lose someone, when you realize, you know what, this life, a lot of the things we're doing is not important. And what you've just said, materialistic things and worrying about, things that don't really matter on the inside, I get it, because whenever I lose someone, I feel that way even more, like, this doesn't matter and that doesn't matter. All that matters is love. All that matters is, your family, that you stay healthy, you take care of each other, you treat people you treat people with love and respect and stuff like that. And you make yourself happy the best you can with what you have, instead of looking for. Yes.
Well, I just did feel in 2019, I don't know, I was on a treadmill. It was like, and I do feel that sometimes the universe intervenes, and this whole pandemic has forced us all to slow down.
Yes.
And spend time with loved ones, that in a way that we would never have done before, to consider what really matters. And I'm sure there's a whole younger generation, I feel for them right now, who are really thinking that, the jobs that they thought mattered really don't. It's the key workers, drivers, postmen. They are saving our lives. They are the true heroes. Maybe that's where I should be, and stop wasting my time with all these jobs that I fancy, because basically they were not essential.
Yes.
Go home. We want the authentic.
It's very true. People who help the world to keep going, who help us to keep going. It's true. I understand what you mean.
And then on top of that, we've had this whole racism issue, which I'd love to speak to you about, because I feel also in the spiritual movement that there's been not enough representation from different cultures. I'm an angel author, and when I went on social media, I love to send comforting angels occasionally. They're always so popular. I'm lucky to work with artists. Some of my books are illustrated, actually, and there's angel pictures. And then I suddenly, even with me, my mother was Dutch Indonesian, my husband is Chinese, so I'm, but I could not find different cultures with angels to send. So I'm actually going to go and commission some now. And I realize how, I talk in my books about oneness and inclusiveness. And I think that the New Age spiritual movement needs to look at itself just as every aspect of life now. We all need to look at what is happening.
Yes.
This has all happened for a reason. It's 2020, but numerology, if you talk to numerologists, I had a numerologist I interviewed recently, she was saying 2020, it's so clear. All the cards up in the air, because a lot of people write to me about the 1111 thing. They keep seeing repeating numbers. 1111 is superpower. It's a master number. It's a spiritual wake-up call. 22 is even more of a spiritual wake-up. So we were kind of always heading for that numerologically. And also 2020 means clear vision. That maybe this is where the world does reset, and we have a better, a kinder, a more compassionate, a more inclusive, a more just world. Oh my word, wouldn't that be wonderful? I just pray we don't go back.
Me too. No,
I hate it when you talk about going back to normal. I don't want to go back to how it was.
I don't think we can after this.
I don't think, and also all these people who've lost loved ones and never got a chance to say goodbye. Isn't that so cruel? You can't hold the hand of someone you spent your life with. Even mothers separated from children who died. It's horrific. And I think the whole world is in bereavement, in a state of grief now, because we have lost our old way of life.
Yes.
And we're going through all these stages of grief. And then, but I think there's a final stage of grief, which is finding meaning. And that's where I think belief in the spiritual aspect, and I talk a lot in my books, I believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience, which is a very different take. And I think that is the way through. Because if we could understand that we are spirit, that we are all connected and we are all one, that's the way out of this. Because then when you hurt someone else, you're hurting yourself. We could all see that, and that's what angel stories teach us, because we were talking about this before, that you also believe, as I do, that angels appear not just with halos and wings.
Yes.
They appear in a beautiful cloud shape. They appear in the laughter of a child. They appear through the hug of a loved one. They appear through the words of a book, or through your amazing YouTube channel. They appear in so many different ways, these messages, just when we need them. And if you're listening and think, oh, it's all random, it's all chance, what is that? Why do you say that? Why choose that negative? Because we can choose a negative or a positive. Why would we choose something that drags us down?
Exactly.
Choose elevate.
It's true. I think that a lot of people don't understand, and the people who don't understand, they've never had an experience. For example, I dream so much, and I tell all my friends about my dreams, and sometimes they even come true. And my friends are proof, that, I remember one day I had a dream that my friend came into some money. So I called her. I said, you are going to come into some money. I can see it happening. Then I was with another friend. I was actually with this friend. And I said to her, oh, I had a dream, that so-and-so, something really good is going to happen to her involving money. Now, as I was with that friend in the car, I was driving, and my other friend called me. So I said to her, you're on loudspeaker, you're through the Bluetooth, because I'm driving and I'm with so-and-so. And she said, you're not going to believe this, but you were right. I came into money. And my other friend was with me, and she said, wow, you were right, And some people don't believe in my dreams, but I tell them anyway. I say, look, I've seen this and that. And sometimes...
I'm so glad you talk about this, because my book, The Premonition Code, a couple of years ago, that's where I co-authored with a neuroscientist. And that book actually made the front page of the Daily Mail. Neuroscientist says we can see the future, and a two-page feature in The Guardian. Can you believe it? And it was basically talking about this phenomenon of dreams that it's rare, you have a rare ability, and how can we train this? How can we use it to make the world a more, it's basically like Minority Report, having precogs who can sense the future. And I learned actually that there's a whole underground network of precogs, professional precogs, who are working with top companies, who are working with law. You wouldn't know, because I had privileged access working with Dr. Mossbridge on this book. I said it was called The Premonition Code. And it was the first book of mine also to be reviewed in a scientific journal. And we were talking about exactly what you're talking about here.
Yes.
Such a scientific it's a tough read. It's not a comfort read. It's just the science of it.
Yes.
You are right. And people say they're not psychic or spiritual. They dream. We all dream. And if you're not remembering your dreams and you're listening, it's simply because you haven't got into the habit of it. You can establish a habit of dream recall. You're still dreaming, you're just not remembering for whatever reason. If you dream, that's you going into that spiritual dimension.
I believe it, because I even posted on my social media a few months back, I had a dream that I saw Mariah Carey. Now, at this time...
Come on your channel.
At this time, I didn't know Mariah Carey was going to have a concert in the UK. I had no idea. And I dreamt that I was right at the back, and I was jumping up to try to see her, because I'm a Mariah Carey fan. I love her to bits. She's my favourite singer. And it so happened that I got a ticket to, it was announced that she was having a concert in the Royal Albert Hall, got myself a ticket, and it was like literally near the back. When I got there, I was moved to the front. I was like in the second row. Can you believe that?
Precognition. You had a precognitive dream. That is a category of dreams. They're very rare, because most dreams are symbolic. They're kind of like a therapy, a commentary on your life in symbolic. So you need to learn the language of symbols, because I've written my A to Z Dream Dictionary is the one that's all over the world. It's my best-selling book, actually.
I need to get that.
I'll send you one. Don't worry. But it's the one that kind of like everybody knows me for it. The dream lady, as well as angels. But most dreams, I say 98% are symbolic. They are therapy. As I always say, your dreams are an internal therapist and much cheaper than a real one. Use your dreams, recall them, because they are trying to help you, give you messages about issues in your life. And they're also very cathartic, trying to work out problems and issues that you have. But there's a very rare category of dreams which are being studied now in sleep and dream research labs that do have precognitive potential. And they want to study this, what's happening, that people are people dreamt about the Twin Towers. People dream about, there were plenty of people who actually dreamt about a pandemic last year. I've had dreams actually of people all in suits and masks and all that, but you dismiss it at the time as nonsense. And that's why I think the best thing people can do with their dreams is however nonsense they are, write them down with the date and a timestamp, because then you have proof. Thing is, the trouble is, it's very easy to say in hindsight, oh, I dreamt I was going to meet you, or I dreamt you were going to wear red today.
Yes.
And preferably a voice recorder, actually, because that's, because writing, you can always fudge the date. Something that's got a timestamp. And then when that happens, it's happened to me a couple of times too. I've had a dream and it's played out a few days later. It's the most euphoric feeling.
Yes.
I want to go and phone up Tom Cruise and say, can I report? No. And then suddenly you realize I'm so limiting in what I think about myself. I think all of us have this potential, but we're so frightened of it because of the messages we get.
Yes.
Because the world doesn't want us to know that we are infinitely creative. We can be infinitely spiritual and psychic. We haven't it. The world wants to keep us because it's easier to manage us.
Yes.
I think we are frightened to shine, a lot of us. We're frightened of our actual abilities rather than the failing. Because I actually think failure is great. I talk about this in my books too. I think my motto is fail and fail again. I've failed so many times in my life, but that's been the biggest catalyst for growth. Because you learn what doesn't work.
Yes. Yes.
And there's no such thing as failure if you regard it like that. It's a lesson, and you just try a different way.
It's true.
And the most successful people in the world are the people who've failed the most. Walt Disney, as I always say, was fired for lack of imagination in his first job.
Lack of imagination. He's got a wild imagination.
Yeah. Did he believe that? Imagine he'd believed that. The trouble is, it breaks my heart when you see young people where they get a rejection or a relationship doesn't work and they think that defines them. And you've got to see it's all in the tapestry of your life. And that's why I actually love getting older. I'm one of these people who actually enjoys getting older. I think you're a fool if you want to be younger. No wise man ever wished to be younger, because as you grow older, things start to have this wonderful clarity. You can step outside of yourself. And how much of your focus has been on rubbish and things that don't matter. So if anyone's here listening, as we, being a woman as well, fearing aging, it's wonderful. It is wonderful. Because you can have that twinkle in your eye, because you can see what's going on. Yes. You can see outside of it all. I think it's a tremendous privilege to grow old. It is, because and I love talking to old people as well. I used to work in an old people's home, the ones who have really got what matters in life. Mm-hmm. Seek out them, talk to them, sit at their feet, listen, their wisdom. And there's nothing sadder than someone who hasn't focused on what matters. Nothing sadder at the end of the day with these people. And if you are listening, anyone, and you know these people who are unpleasant, unjust, narcissistic, cruel, trust me, at the end of their life, it's a tragedy talking to these people, because when they realize that they've played it wrong, it's one of the most tragic things ever. It really is. I believe self-love is the foundation of spiritual growth. I believe it's the starting point. Until you can really love and parent yourself, you're not going to be able to progress spiritually. And people often think self-love is selfish. It's not.
Can I ask you, do you know anyone who has had dreams about their future spouses and it's actually happened?
I have a few examples, but more likely I've had people who've dreamt what their future children, they've met their children before they were born or even conceived, and they look exactly like that. A lot of unborn children dreams, or children telling them that they're going to be born. One woman who said that she met every one of her 3 sons in her dreams. You know, she didn't meet a girl and they all, and one to, right down to a mole or a marking that they had, which is incredible. And yes, people have met their future self, but often when you have these kind of dreams, what your future partner is basically you. Because there is this whole thing about self-partnering. And I know that sounds really odd, but unless you actually love yourself, nobody else is ever going to be able to fill that hole. Really, nobody is ever going to give you that sustenance. And I think the journey of our lives, and it's self-love is the hardest thing for whatever reason. A lot of sensitive, caring, kind people seem to be born in situations where they don't get the nurturing, they don't get their love, they've got their wounded inner child. And then that's a recipe, I know for myself, that's a recipe for disasters in relationships. I mean, I had an absent father, so my early relationships were so toxic, narcissistic individual after narcissistic individual, and I go running after them for whatever reason. Or they treat, the worse they treat you, the more you go after. And I had to learn the hard way. And it was only when I began to think, no, I'm going to, no more relationships, I'm going to focus on myself and truly mean it, that I actually met someone who did treat me with the respect I feel I deserve. And now I find that in all areas of my life, I'm very alert to this, because I think you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I'm constantly looking at, obviously not children because they're dependents, that's not, but you know, adults. And if anyone treats you less than you, obviously you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt occasionally, you can't be that rigorous, but if it happens 1 or 2 times, no, you don't need, I'd rather be alone than with people who are not my cheerleaders now. I've got to that conclusion that being happy alone, I think, is the greatest gift.
Yes.
It's tough because we are social beings and we want to find people, but I do think that there is a correlation. Once you are happy alone, that somehow people just come to you, you know?
I definitely agree with that. I really do. When you said that you'd rather be around people who are for you, because I believe in energy as well. Sometimes you can just sense,
Yes.
you can feel the energy when someone is not for you, and you might have had a history of friendship with them, for years, or even family members, but you can, you go back and you try again, and it's still, you're met with that same negative energy, and you just think, well, you're not for me.
Do you know where you mostly meet the negative energy? Actually, is when you're recovering and when good things happen. That's actually where you really find out, because misery loves company. And I found actually, because I have done some quite extraordinary things in my life, like the Russell Brand on Piers Morgan, things like that. You suddenly find that the people aren't happy for you. And that's a big warning sign. You're absolutely right with energy. And then there's a part of me, because everybody loves to be loved, that you bring yourself down. You don't want to shine because you don't want them to feel unsettled. But then you think, why have you got someone in your life who doesn't want the best for you?
Exactly.
Friendships are as complicated as relationships. And female friendships are especially. I've had female friendships that have gone horribly wrong. When you realize that someone isn't who you thought they were.
Yes.
And I've got to the point now when I just simply say, sorry, you feel that way, and I just leave it. I'm not going to be drawn into wrangles, and it is great, because, as I said, I'm very happy with my own company now. Taken me a while to get there, though. It has taken me a long, long time. But I think that's the journey of our lives, is self-love. And then, I've met, I spent time in a nunnery. I was contemplating my options before university. And it was then that I first saw the contentment in solitude. So I was very young in life, I saw it, but I wasn't quite ready to see it. There was a glow about these women, that they had realized that it's the self-love, and that you don't get it from outside yourself in other people and other things. And if you go to monasteries as well, the monks, there's a twinkle in their eye, a joy. But it is a lifetime of learning, and I think it's what we're all here to learn. That path, I think we're all here to learn to love ourselves, and then when we love ourselves, we realize that we love everybody. And it's showing love and compassion to others is to say that when you hurt someone else, you're actually hurting yourself, because we are all one in spirit. Every near-death experience, I've written books. The Afterlife is Real is one of my books, where I collected near-death experience stories, from all over the world. And overriding theme is oneness, a feeling, that there are these people being drawn towards a tunnel of light, seeing their life in reverse. Now, that's an awesome thought. Imagine right now, everyone listening, you're having to watch your life right now again. Would you be proud of what you're doing? You do experience, near-death experiences talk about that. And then they talk about this infinite understanding that everything is one. Everything is interconnected. Truly transformative. And then when they come back, people typically from near-death experiences, their life is completely transformed. Most of them give up their jobs, change their attitude, change their lives. And that, for me, is proof that they've been to the other side. They've seen something.
Have you spoken to anybody who has gone to the other side and been met with a place like hell?
When they do meet hell, what they don't understand is, yes, we're talking about, what about serial killers, murderers? Where do they go? Yes, they do go into spirit, but what seems to happen, from what I've gathered from when I've talked to people, is it what you experience is how you impacted other people. It's not punishment, it's all for learning. So, for example, someone who's led a really selfish, cruel life, in spirit, they will experience what the victims felt, not for punishment. I don't believe in the concept, but as they have to learn empathy. This is what our spirits are here for. Empathy is a superpower. Empathy leads to compassion, which is taking action to help people. And that is on the other side what happens. Suicide victims also feel that they will feel the pain that they have caused their loved ones they will have an understanding. So like suicide is never an answer in spirit, because you come back to yourself. It's not an escape. But you basically, in spirit, the way you have treated others, you feel. I've spoken to mediums, but some very famous, like James from Prague, Gordon Smith, all these people, or near-death experiences like Eben Alexander. I've interviewed him. He's in my books. Anita Morjani is another one I've spoken to and interviewed. And they talk about, yes, this concept of hell, but it's your own hell. Every moment of our lives, we're creating our afterlife with our actions and our thoughts and our feelings. We are creating the other side every moment. And that is a very intriguing thought, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It really is.
It's like we are creating with every moment of our being. We're going to meet it again. We're going to have a life. There's some people who believe that there's a kind of like a soul school up there where we get a review and, then we're reborn again. If you believe in reincarnation, that's another thing I've been. Interestingly, BBC Radio 4 Beyond Belief, which is a very traditional religious program, they recently did one on reincarnation, and they called me up to get some expert opinion. Isn't that a sign of a shift in the times,
Yes.
That,
what are your views on reincarnation?
I think it makes perfect sense. I don't know all the answers. I'm very honest. I don't know all the answers. I'm not one of these people who say, look, I know all the answers. I've been to the other side. I can see angels. I believe in it. I sense it. I have my moments of profound clarity, but I'm not going to say, I know the answers. But for me, reincarnation would make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. That we come back and we try again. And also, this world is so wonderful. Who wouldn't want to come back again? In one lifetime, you can only do so many things. It's like I sense with you that you've got great psychic ability. But what I've noticed when I've worked with psychics and professional mediums, that a lot of them, years of training. There are, it takes, decades of sitting in groups and training. And you, obviously, your talent is communication. You can't do it all. We can't have it all in this life. Yes. Communicating your message. So you can't focus on, because when you do go down that spiritual development path, it is all consuming. It's like becoming a mother, having another child. You devote your energy. You can't split and do so many things. Because I've often wished I could do more development training, but it's so time consuming. It is a skill that you learn. I learned that with the professional precognitives. They do remote viewing sessions, go into a meditative trance-like state. It's fascinating. And if anyone's listening and wants to know about the best time actually to imprint your brain is first thing in the morning and last thing at night, because in those twilight moments between waking and sleep, your brain is in a very receptive theta state, similar to a child under the age of 5. That's why the messages you get in childhood are so ingrained in your brain, because your brain is forming and learning. But we enter those stages twice a day. We have an incredible opportunity to change our lives for the better. Just before you fall asleep and the moment you wake up, thinking grateful and positive thoughts, that can actually reshape your brain in a positive way, because we tend to go back to those negative thoughts in childhood and patterns. But the brain is not fixed. It's constantly being shaped by our thoughts and our actions. And I've done a lot of work with rituals as well, the things we do every day, how they shape our brain. Our actions actually shape our brain just as much as our thoughts shape our actions. The two are so connected. And doing positive things, like when you get up, make your bed, get up a bit earlier, eat healthy, think of what you have to be grateful for, not what you haven't got to be grateful for. Fake a smile, even if you don't feel like it, because the action of faking a smile can trick your brain into thinking you're happy. This is actually true. All these things, they're these tricks and things we can do every day of our lives to reshape our brains into a more positive, uplifting direction. And I said twice a day, if people are feeling low and have got into a negative thought pattern, because negativity is so draining and it's hard to escape. Those 2 moments are wonderful times to change your life for the better. And also, if you're waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning randomly, a lot of people hate that. I don't know if you've had that happen, that you just suddenly wake up.
Yeah.
Do you get that? It's your spirit calling. I think because in monasteries and nunneries, it's the call to prayer at that time, because the world is quiet. And I truly believe that you've had such a powerful dream or creative surge that your brain is waking you up, wanting you to write down what you think and feel. Don't ever think that time that it's wrong. And waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. is very powerful spiritually. Some of the most amazing things that have changed the world for the better have happened in those early morning hours. Don't get stressed about it. It's heaven calling your name.
That's amazing.
Write down what your dream was then. Write down what you're thinking and feeling, because it's so important you're being woken up by spirit, I believe. I'm going on a tangent here, but
wow, now I can see why you believe that, and I can understand that as well. Speaking of rituals, I wanted to ask you, what are your views on things like earth stones and burning sage and stuff? Because I'm very into those things and crystals, and people have even called me a witch before, you know.
I think you could have that potential. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yes. But a witch is just basically, for me, is a spiritual person, like a shaman, like a healer, like I mean, in times past, people with your inclination towards the spiritual, with your obviously link to the other side, would have been revered and looked to for guidance. People would have come to you, sat at your feet, wanted their dreams interpreted, wanting advice on healing. Sad thing about today is people like you, who have that natural connection to spirit, have been pushed to the bottom of the pile as other things. But as I said, I think the lockdown is reshaping that. But to go back to my view on crystals, on anything from the earth is magical and has an energy, has a living power, and I think tuning into that is extremely powerful. I'm very much for that, as long as we remember that the greatest power is ourselves, that these things are a bit like Dumbo's feather. You know, in the movie, he only thought he could fly if he held a feather, but he could fly anyway. That what they do is they give us belief, and we need that sometimes. Yes. The greatest power, though, is you and what you bring into that. All these things like dream catchers, crystals, yes, they do have a connection and they can help open channels, but the greatest power is always your belief and your energy. You can actually do without all these things and still be as powerful. And that's when you advance something, you realize that all these are, in a way, props. It's like tarot cards. A lot of people are frightened of those. They're not. They're just beautiful symbolic images. It's the energy you put into it and the belief and your interpretation that is life-changing. But they are wonderful starting points and triggers. For example, healers and psychics, they need a trigger. So if somebody comes to them for a reading, they will turn a card because that card they believe is sent for them because it's got a specific message and it's a trigger.
Yes.
But, you know, you can do without them, you know, but they are extremely comforting. And as I said, anything from the earth, I believe, has a tremendous energy and a
I was
power.
going to ask you that. You said anything from the earth. Trees, because my dad, my biological dad, he told me a story about a friend that he had who likes to go to parks and takes his shoes off and hugs a tree and literally like shovels his feet in the dirt and says that he hugs the tree and he says he's plugging in to the earth's energy.
Oh, I'd like to meet him. What he's doing is in the scientific term for what he's doing is called earthing. And there has been research on this, and I've mentioned this in my books, that earthing, yeah, it can be very calming, and it's barefoot walking. And so if you see someone barefoot walking in the park, don't laugh at them. They're trying to tune into the healing and comforting energies of the earth. And tree hugging as well, there is a wisdom of trees because trees have an underground communication. One tree that's hurt, trees at the other end of the forest know because they've shown that there's a kind of an energy connection. There's a wonderful book called I haven't written it, I wish I did, called The Wisdom of Trees. It's the most beautiful book. It was actually hugely successful a few years ago, showing trees talk to each other. They have an internal communication. They are alive. They know when they can also send out a signal when there's an infestation of pests to each other. They're alive. And I think respecting plants and nature and the earth, your friend is on exactly the right track. We're destroying the forests, we're destroying the earth, we are hurting the earth. And you know, I don't know, this is very controversial, but is the pandemic some kind of payback? It's interesting also the pandemic started with animals, bats.
Yes.
I mean, I'm passionate animal lover, and sometimes I prefer animals to people. You know, and I cannot abide animal cruelty. You know, and it's just an awareness that every living being needs to be cherished. Obviously, you know, animals are part of the food chain, but we can treat them with loving care and respect, as some cultures do, when the animals are treated with great respect and with compassion. I just truly pray that after post 2020, that's where we're going to head. Yeah. That the world is a more kinder, compassionate pace, because I think that's the force. I actually collaborated with the Jedi Knights. But people were thinking, Theresa, you've gone nuts. Why are you doing this? That's how I got onto with Piers Morgan with my lightsaber. It was just me trying to say, look, the force is spirit. It's the force. And spirit, what is spirit? Spirit is eternal power of love. It's the eternal power of compassion. It's the eternal power of kindness. It's all it is. And I believe those three things go on to the other side. And that essence of a person, somewhere it goes on.
I definitely agree.
And I believe your father is alive within you, with everything you do. Every time you laugh, he laughs. Every time you cry, he cries. He's alive within you, but he's alive in some dimension. He's alive in your dreams. And I believe also on the other side that you will meet him again. Because I've done a lot of research on this. It's just what I want to know is that if you have these experiences and they cause great alarm, that's not angels, that's not heaven. That is your ego and your fear. Fear, I mean, what they say, one of the greatest things that the devil pulled off is convincing people he doesn't exist. You know, you've got to realize that is your fear and your anxiety, right? It's not real. What's real is any angelic experience will leave you feeling comforted and better. If it causes distress, if it causes confusion, if it causes pain, it's not. It's not from the other side. It's from right here. Right?
I'm really glad that you mentioned that because I want to talk a bit about dark forces and negative energy and stuff like that. So I know that some people have nightmares and spiritual warfares and stuff like that. So what are your views on those things? Where do you think they come from? Is it the devil or?
They come from the person that they come from ourselves. Nightmares, for example, I have had a lot of people write to me at night. It's a great big spiritual wake up call. Your nightmares are trying to tell you about something in your daily life that needs healing. And you will continue having these nightmares until you sort it out. Dreams are trying to tell you that something isn't working. You need to reassess. You need to look at your life. You need to have a bit more self-love, right? You need to work on things, because when you do, the nightmares disappear. Same with recurring dreams. If you have a similar dream taste, until you that you're frightened of what you're going to have this dream. Dark forces, yes. Thing is, we give them reality for whatever reason, because it's much easier to blame your depression or your lack of success in life to dark forces, isn't it? Than to look at who you are. It's so easy to do that and to give it a name and to blame. Oh, it wasn't me. I was under psychic attack. It's, for me, that's the problem. And I know people will be thinking, well, no, these things happen to me. But why are you allowing them to happen to you? Put your bubble on. And my books often have exercises. If you do feel, I mean, I get that too, and I'm going to do something and you get nervous, anxious, you think it's all going to go wrong, it's all going to go wrong. Bubble on, calm, see the bigger picture. This doesn't really matter. Okay, you mess up this interview or this relationship. At the end of the day, you're all going to die like everyone else. It doesn't matter. See the bigger picture. Yeah. If you can get that calm, then you can repel it. Why are you allowing this to happen? You are stronger than you think. You have a choice. You can choose to have light forces, or you can choose to have dark forces. Why? Stop being a victim. There's too much victim. It's happening to me. It's not. The world doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. It happens for you. And it's always giving you a choice. And I know it's easy to say, if your life's going well, sometimes bad things happen to good people. And I don't know why. Children die, injustice happen. I don't know why. I really don't know why. But I always recommend a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This guy was put in a concentration camp during World War II. He saw his family slaughtered around him. But he realized that they could take everything, but they couldn't take his spirit. And he survived this concentration camp. And that book, if you think your life's bad, and if you think you're a victim and everything's going wrong, read that book. This guy somehow managed to find dignity and strength through the most utter cruelty and loss and pain anyone could ever imagine. He's an absolute inspiration, and I recommend it time and time again. It's a tough read, but as I said, he realized that they can take everything, but they can't take your spirit. And you need to take care of your spirit. As I said, I don't know why bad things happen. I wish I did. I always compare it to the underside of a tapestry, all knots and loose ends, and then maybe on the other side we'll see the bigger picture and why these things happened. I don't know why. I wish I did. You can say the darkness before the dawn, labor pains before childbirth. This doesn't really help when you're going through it and you are the victim of cruelty and injustice and pain. I don't know why, but you can, you always have a choice about your spirit and about trying to see a bigger picture.
Well, I've got two more questions for you. What are your views on things like poltergeists?
Poltergeists, they typically happen, don't they, around teenage girls? And if anyone's listening has got a teenage daughter, there's a lot of energy, isn't there? It's an energy thing. Poltergeists, again, it's to do with the energies that someone is creating without realizing, and young people don't realize sometimes how powerful they are, and they can unconsciously create an energy. Poltergeist cases, I say, they typically happen to young people, especially girls, and maybe this energy is so strong it can move things, but a child has yet to have that understanding that they have the power of choice and they have the power to learn. Children, that's where the parents can come in. And usually poltergeist activity happens when the child is being bullied. There's family dynamics, maybe abuse or alcoholism that's all under the carpet and nobody talks about. And the child is basically manifesting in the only way they can, pain And I believe eating disorders have a similar, you know, when you see people with eating disorders, it's often to do with the pain in the family dynamic. They have no other way to express that pain but taking it out on themselves, or this energy explodes. And this is where parents and carers and teachers can come in, because if that activity is, this child needs a lot of love and a lot of support. And I wish children had more of that. There's no spiritual guidance in schools anymore. You know, a lot of people are turning away from religion. You know, I used to be very Christian. As I said, I wanted to become a nun, but then I went to Cambridge and I studied theology and world religions, and I realized that every religion is beautiful. And then I went beyond that and just thought I can be spiritual without being religious. That's where I am right now. But I wish children, in the absence of religion, because at least religion most of the time gave you a framework, a moral framework, values, systems. And now that's gone. So what's happening is children are turning to their peers or social media for their morals. And for what the point of life is. And that I wish in schools that there were kind of spiritual awareness classes. You know, if you don't like the spiritual terminology, if you're an atheist and you don't want to believe in that, just that basically how we are in charge of our thoughts and feelings, not the other way around. Because once you understand that, I'm not angry, anger is passing through me. Once you realize that I'm not depressed, depression is you can be almost like in a meditative state, that you can sit by a pond and you can watch these emotions going past, and you realize that you are the manager of them. I wish children could be taught this. You know, and things like worry, for example, is the most toxic thing. People say, I'm worried, I'm worried. Worry achieves nothing. People think when they're worrying, they're doing something. They're not. Doing absolutely nothing. If you're worried about something, do something. If you can't do anything about it, let it go. You know, I wish kids could be taught these lessons. I wish I'd been able to learn them sooner.
True, we should definitely have like some spiritual classes in school, because they do help and they do strengthen people too. So I do agree with you, and it can even help things like, you know, with depression, anxiety and things like that. It's part of life skills, really. I believe that spirituality should
it is taught, but if there was also the spiritual perspective about the bigger picture and the value of love, kindness and compassion. Because a lot of people think, well, what's the point? Because they often see kind and compassionate people finishing last. And yes, that does happen. But however, at the end of the day, that person can sleep easy at night.
Yes.
You know, the other person may get temporary short-term success, but it always comes back. It always comes back. And if anybody thinks that external success, popularity, relationships, etc., can make them happy, just look at these high-profile cases of people who have it all and end up either taking their own lives, going on drugs, or being unhappy. I mean, I remember I loved the Harry Potter films when my children were growing up, you know, and actress Emma Watson, she did a very moving article the other day that she didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you were Hermione. You had the most, you got millions, you're known all over the world, but she was depressed. Yeah. So why do we think all these things are going to make us happy? If we see time and time again, these people who have what we think we want, unhappy. Or going from destructive relationship to destructive relationship.
Very true.
You know, you see it. They're not happy when they've got it all. So we're being shown in plain sight by the angels that this is not the answer. Why are we still chasing it?
Yes, it's true.
Why aren't we looking at people who are content? I mean, some of the most wonderful, inspirational people I know are people who have the most humble jobs and who just basically are a masterclass in how to live a happy life, because they've worked it out. This doesn't matter.
It's true.
So much of what we focus on does not matter.
You're right. Most definitely right. So my last question is, would you be able to share with us an experience that you've had yourself with someone from the afterlife, please?
Exactly. Yes, of course. I have many experiences, but I always doubted them at the time. And that's why I write about that in my books, because I am quite skeptical about these things. You know, I think, oh, it's coincidence. But when my mother passed, I was close with my mother. I was in my mid-20s and I went through a very black depression because I felt my mother was actually a spiritualist. She, you know, communicated with the other side. She was a medium, for want of a better word. And I thought, well, I'm not sensing anything from you. Years went past. And I thought, it's all rubbish. You know, if anyone, you know, why aren't you there? Why don't I feel you? I didn't at all. And I went to grief therapy and nothing worked. Got worse and worse. And then I remember I went to sleep and I had this most incredible dream that she came into my bedroom. It was a very realistic setting. That's a mark of a night vision. And she just sat on the end of my bed and we talked. We had the most wonderful conversation. And then I woke up and it was so real that I shouted out to her to make me a cup of tea like I used to. And then it's sort of like, I realized that she wasn't there, obviously but it just made, I realized that she was there. And this is such a simple story, and I'm telling it because it's so simple, but it gave me such healing that no amount of grief therapy could. And then other signs and started to come in, you know, that I'd find, you know, objects placed on the table. Well, there's no way they'd been put there that were connected to I don't know how they happened, things like that. And, you know, I get emotional when I think about it now. And that's a mark of a night vision. Because a lot of people say, well, I can't sense my loved ones, but have you dreamt about them? Because if you have, this is them trying. Because dreams are such a gentle way for the afterlife to connect to us. The most non-threatening.
Yeah.
You can always dismiss it as a dream. Yeah. You know, it's quite alarming, you know, because often people say, well, why don't they just show themselves? There's a reason, because it's very alarming. It would also stop our grieving because we'd want them back physically. Yeah. And that's not good for us. For whatever reason, they've gone from our lives because it's time for us to move on to the next stage. Things happen for a reason, in my opinion. And when someone you love greatly dies, it's because the love you gave to them, time for that love to come back to you. You know? And for you, in the case of my mother, to mother myself. And that's such a hard thing to learn, but that's often what happens with bereavement. It's time for you to... Giving love to someone is beautiful, but one of the most beautiful gifts of death is they release that love. All that love that you gave, huge potential. It can come back to you. I'm sorry, I'm just getting emotional. But
no, I'm sorry. Please don't worry. No, I'm so honoured that you shared that story with us. Thank you so much.
But there were other ones where I feel that, you know, I feel that she gave me a message that I believe saved my life when I was at a junction. She always used to tell me, do the right thing, Theresa. That was her thing. And I didn't know whether to go left or right. And I heard her voice outside my say, do the right thing. And I went right, you know. And if I'd gone left, I almost certainly would have been involved in a pile-up because the car I was trading. Things like that have happened to me, which, as again, you can dismiss as coincidence. But for me, they feel like powerful afterlife signs, powerful ways of love reaching through. But you have to be at a stage where you are receptive to it, and when you've got to a point where you are taking care of yourself. It rarely happens, you know, when you're not at that stage. You know, but once it does, you start to see heaven everywhere. I mean, I see my mother everywhere now, in colours, in the sky, and you start to see them through all these signs, through words, through pieces of music that were her favourite suddenly appearing on the radio, all these random signs that you hear, and you just know that they're around you. You know, and I hope people who've lost loved ones in the lockdown will have a sense, especially ones that they couldn't say goodbye, that their loved ones knew that and that they are still there for them.
Yes, this just came into my head actually, that one day I went to Iceland. This was after my dad had passed away, and I came back in and I told you, I think my favourite singer is Mariah Carey. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Mariah Carey's Bye Bye started playing on my phone.
I think
mum was there with me.
Themselves to technology. Angels move with the times. As I say, they appear in many disguises, many, and they can also appear through technology, random things happening with technology a lot, but they also appear through other people. I mean, that powerful image of the riots of the guy lifting up the man on, he's an earth angel. He doesn't realize that he's unconsciously doing the work of heaven. Yes. We are all earth angels. We just need to realize that we all have the power to grow wings.
I think it's absolutely amazing that, you know, you were in your car and had you turned left, you would have been involved in a
Yeah.
pile-up, but you heard your mother's voice saying, do the right thing. You turned right and you're
And
fine. You know, you avoided all of that.
I was actually going to an interview, and turning right actually made me miss that interview. And these are the days before mobile phones. I couldn't probably phone anyone, and I was really frustrated because it was the first time I got a radio interview. It was one of my first, and I missed it, and they wouldn't reschedule. I was fuming, and it was only when I got back onto the news the other night when I realized, because I recognized I was late because I was trailing this van, and I recognized it was exactly the same van. And as I said, sometimes when things go wrong in our life, there's actually a bigger picture there. So when relationships go wrong, when you don't get jobs, and you think at the time, oh, my world's ended, years later, you're going to look back with hindsight and think, thank God I didn't get that job. Thank God I left that guy, whatever, you know?
Yes.
Often what we think is right at the time, oh no, heaven knows better. Further down the line, it's going to make sense. And to go back to my theme of loving getting older, that's one of the joys. You know, you often see people sometimes contentedly sit in a park who are older. Let them, they're just looking back on their life with a smile. And seeing this wonderful, you think about the people in your life, the miracle of how you are connected to them, of all the billions of people on the planet, why them? And a connection starts to form. And you, as I say, one of the joys of getting older is looking back and seeing, I know why I did that.
Yes.
I know why I learned that skill. I know why I met this person. I get it now. It's exciting.
Imagine putting the pieces together. It
Puzzle.
must be such a revelation when you finally realize that, oh, this is why, you know. And I have had those moments in my life, but I know that there are probably so many more to come.
You're so young, Kandy. You got oceans of left to go, and I'm sure you're going to do big things as well, even bigger than you've done already. I feel that.
Oh, thank you. I love hearing about people's stories. I'm so fascinated by other people's lives, and especially if they've had, you know, down moments, if they've fallen.
Coped, yeah.
Yes, I want to know how they picked themselves up. How did you keep going? What helped you? You know, I can't. I'm fascinated by people and the way they've lived their lives. To be honest.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, that is wonderful. I mean, we all have our stories. And also another thing I feel is that you never know what people are going through. So always be kind. Yeah. You don't know what hurt someone is. And sometimes people lash out. You don't know what's going on in their life.
Yes.
So always aim high and be kind, you know, because you do not know the hidden pain. You don't know the stories that people have. And we all think everything's about us. Yes. And it's not often. Often everything other people do is about them. It's not about you. Nothing people say or do is about you. It's always their response. It's always about them. And realizing that is another big life lesson that we learn, that it's everything other people do is about them, not you. You know.
That is deep, and I can understand what you mean. I really do understand what you mean by that. Wow, it has been amazing speaking with you. I feel this warmth. I can't even explain it.
Please keep doing what you're doing. We need people like you lighting up lives.
Thank you. We need wonderful women like you. You know, I need to get myself some more of your books. Honestly,
honestly, I call myself a serial spiritual writer. Really, I am. You know, it's too much. I've been very, very blessed to have opportunity to write book after book. But I just love the subject. As I said, I've always had my following mainly abroad, because in Europe and overseas, there's more openness to the spiritual perspective. But never before, as in 2020, have I had this level of interest from all sorts of people. As I say, from clothing companies to brands to media, national newspaper, asking for expert opinion or dream interpretation. It's like being a giant spiritual wake-up call 2020. I'm just I never thought this would happen. I'm not that psychic. I'm blessed in my lifetime that I've seen it. I mean, a few years ago, I would have never thought that I'd be on the phone to Yahoo talking about what I'm doing, or that a store like Anthropology would want me to do a webinar for them, or that, you know, BBC Radio 4 would be in touch about. Got so used to people almost like thinking, ah, bless her, she believes all that. And then to be taken seriously, to be asked for expert opinion. The first breakthrough, though, was when the scientists opened their doors to me and they allowed me, as a New Age writer, to find out about their research. And I said, anyone who wants to know about the research, do check out Windbridge Institute and the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Noetic means what's invisible and unseen. Some of the world's leading scientists there are researching it. And I had the privilege, Kandy, also of speaking to Lauren Carpenter, who is the co-founder of Pixar Studios, double Oscar winner and science director at Disney. Now, if you look at some of the big spiritual message there, he is a physicist and he researches what is invisible and unseen. You've got people like that. Now, I had the privilege of talking to him. Proper scientists.
That is amazing.
What is consciousness? What is it? We don't know what consciousness is. Why is it? And what they're gradually beginning to prove, this is a big concept, that our mind can exist separate from our brain. And that's in dreams, that, you know, near-death experiences show that when the brain is dead, that the mind is still existing. And this is what their research is all into, the scientists are looking into. It's a big concept, but that our minds, our thoughts can exist independent of our brain, away from the physical body. But if you know that whenever you close your eyes and you think of a loved one, if they're at the other end of the earth, you are connected in some way. And this is what scientists are studying, the power of feelings and the unseen. There is a whole amount of credible research going on out there. And to go back to your
when you say that the mind can exist out of the brain, do you think that's the soul?
Yes. Oh, yes. You can call it what do you like. Call it an angel, call it soul, call it spirit, call it heaven, whatever you like. There's so many terms for it. But near-death experience studies are the closest we've got to proof that heaven is real. These people are able to see things happening to their body, are able to meet people in loved ones on the other side, come back with the most life-changing stories. And the most interesting thing about this research is the person who pioneered it, Dr. Sam Pioneer. He's a skeptic and atheist, but he pioneered resuscitation equipment that is bringing people back from the brink, because you've got to remember 50 years ago these people would have died. But now we're hearing so much about near-death experience because people are being brought back from death. But he just got all these stories were coming time and time again, and he thought this has to be studied. He doesn't necessarily, but he said, what is happening? And his research made all the national newspapers, that he believes tentatively that at least 3 minutes after bodily death, the brain is still functioning somewhere. And there's more ongoing study in that. And I think we may never have proof, but I think near-death experiences come as close to we can, because there's too much about it that is unexplained. Everybody says it's the dying brain, but that would be random and chaotic. The stories that come through are so clear. They have a beginning and a middle and end. A dying brain wouldn't be capable of that. Also, they have so much similarities regardless of religion and culture. And you study near-death experiences in children. That's the most fascinating, because they haven't had the cultural indoctrination yet. They don't know about tunnels of light. They haven't been taught all that. They're 3 or 4. Yes. And they come back with spellbinding narratives of what they've seen, and people that they've met in heaven that they didn't even know were dead, but they are. Yes. And I dedicated my life to getting this research out there.
I definitely believe it, because I was interviewing a young lady a few weeks back. It's on my YouTube channel actually, and she was in a domestic violence relationship, and she actually died. Yeah. And she said that thing about the tunnel, it's true, and she came back to life, and she's living her life now. But I remember when she explained it, when she was speaking about it, I was just like, I hear about people saying this all the time, and now I've actually met someone who's saying it's real.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories about it, and some credible scientific research into it. But the scientific community doesn't really want us to know about this because it blows out of the water everything we're taught at school. And it's so mind-blowing. But I always say, look, at school we're taught that space is eternal. We accept that. But what eternal? What? Why do we accept that space is eternal? Why can't our spirits be eternal? You know, if space, you know, what is eternity? Something that never ends. That's a mind-blowing concept, isn't it? But we're all kind of like take that as given. But that's mad.
Yes.
That's just as mad. So, you know, why can't our essence in the same way? And if you've ever had the privilege of being with someone when they passed over, you will see the light goes out. You know, their body reminds me always of just a coat being put down. That's why I'm not that big into funerals. Funerals are for the living.
Okay.
It's for us to say goodbye to the vessel, the coat, the clothes. Spirit's gone. Spirit has gone. So all these people in the lockdown who couldn't attend funerals, go to a beautiful place in nature, go to a lake, go to a forest, say goodbye to your loved one. That's where they are now.
That's brilliant.
Not in the ground. That's just like, you know, mourning when you've outgrown a jumper or it's got holes in it, you know, and having a burial for the jumper. It's just skin.
They're not there. I know what you mean.
And every night when we go to sleep, we're having a mini death. We lose consciousness. We don't know why we lose consciousness every night, and we go somewhere. So in a way, every day of our lives, we're being prepared. And as I said, there's some cultures that believe that every night when you go to sleep, you do die and you are reborn. And there is this culture I famously talk about a lot, the napping culture. They don't go to sleep for more than 20 minutes because they believe if they do, they are a new person, and they refer to the person they were yesterday in the past tense, and they have a new name.
Wow.
So they nap. It's not the Sonoy, the Para tribe. Yeah, they don't like to sleep, but they're the happiest tribe on earth. One of the happiest tribes on earth with very little incidence of crime or depression, and I think that's a wonderfully interesting concept. That in a way, it's a very sacred thing when you go to sleep at night. You're going to enter into, and if you could live your life like that every morning when you wake up, you're born anew. You are another wonderful opportunity to live in this beautiful planet and to make a difference. And stop thinking you can't make a difference, because simply smiling or being a kind person makes a massive difference.
It's so true.
It's a ripple effect, isn't it? Because if you're kind,
it is.
If you're kind to someone, they feel inspired to be. You don't know. Say you've just held a door open for someone, smiled at them. You don't know. That person, that may have given that person a lift. They will then go on and be kinder to their loved ones. It's a ripple.
Yes.
You don't know. One kind act can just. You can make a difference by very simple things. Everything you do can make a difference, and even if you don't see the effects of it, it's all part of changing the world for the better. And right now, goodness, we need to change it for the better, don't we?
Yes, we do. Most definitely.
But the scientists and the materialists have had and the narcissists have had enough time now. They've made a mess of it. As have the older generation. I'm embarrassed of my generation and older. Made a complete mess of it. It's up to the youth now. Sometimes some of them have really made a mess of things.
I agree.
New way, new beginning.
Yes, I think it's definitely time for a new beginning. Amazing. Oh, speaking to you has given me so much to think about. No, honestly, and you are amazing. The works that you do is brilliant, and I hope to see you everywhere that has to do with spirituality and things about the afterlife, because we do need these things explained to us. And I'm sure so many people have questions, especially now in this day and age. We aren't really listening to things that have been written centuries ago, because we're seeing changes taking place. So we want a more modern explanation, and you have done that today. And honestly, I thank you.
The person I'm speaking to, as I said, it's because you brought it out.
No, I thank you so much for this interview. Honestly, speaking with you has just been, it's been a highlight of my day. And I'm going to have a smile on my face all day, probably all week.
I'm going to tell my family that, because I wish they'd see that.
Do you know what? Often it's not your family that see it, it's always outsiders. But
actually, that's been good about the lockdown, is that, you know, we've got, you know, they've seen me at work, you know, because it's like, you know, my children are in that stage when it's like, oh my God, here she goes again.
Oh, really? They come to you for like guidance and advice and stuff.
Starting to, it's getting better.
Oh, brilliant.
It's lovely, but you know, it's always like that old mum, you know. Well, here she goes. But they are starting, because they're thinking, oh my God, she's speaking to Kandy. She's going to speak to this, and it's like, oh my God, maybe she's got a point.
No, it's true. You're speaking to people who work at Yahoo and, you know, scientists and stuff. They must really look at you twice now and think, oh, Mum is onto something.
I know. It's to impress my children. Yes.
Amazing.
Thank you, Kandy.
Thank you so much, Theresa. Thank you.